with great
So, good morning, Zack.
Hey, good morning.
Yeah, it's a privilege to be with you here today. Could you give our viewers just a rundown of your church life and how you came to know the Lord, and your from your perspective, what your thoughts are on youth ministry and where they're going today in the modern church, as opposed to Orthodox Christianity?
Okay. I was, prior to being saved, I was going to a church that was very mainstream, very in line with a lot of modern evangelicalism, a large denomination. And this denomination had a very large emphasis in youth ministries and student ministries, as they'd be called. We had a youth group of close to 150 students a night, which caused us to have a lot of emphasis on trying to narrow those numbers down and build a community between all the students. And the youth pastor saw that it was best to do that by playing games and doing things like that, whether that was rock, paper, scissors competitions or different challenges that people would have to do, or different gross things that would make everybody laugh. Whatever that was, he saw that as the best way to really build community among that youth group. And I was involved in that and was actually enjoying my time in that. And then in April of 2008, I watched Paul Washer's shocking youth message on YouTube, and he talks a lot about false conversion and talks about the truth of the gospel, and really hearing it explained in that moment, it was as if I had never heard it before, and it was a truth that I had never really had presented before. And so I, right there, was, for the first time in my life, truly convicted of my sin, and for the first time in my life, truly repentant of that sin. I had grown up in a Christian home, grown up in churches, but that really had no bearing on my salvation. And so I was, at that moment, truly and genuinely, by the grace of God, saved. But the youth group activities had actually really just started. The youth group continued to grow, continued to develop, and really the height of the different activities that we were doing to build community didn't really start taking place until after I was saved. And it was, we got a new youth pastor in who saw that as his sole focus, was to build that community and just to really just have fun. And that was the emphasis of the student ministry, was to have fun. And it, in all honesty, it wasn't to always be pointing to Christ, but it was to try to attract youth in, have fun activities for them to do, and then somehow that would cause them, somewhere in the thinking, that it would cause them to look to Christ based on the fun that they were having in their youth group. I was not incredibly crazy about that, but I chose. It was fun, and so I chose to continue to be involved in that. But as I continued to learn and to grow, and as I continued to listen to sound teaching by Paul Washer or Vodi Bakum and Steve Lawson and different people, I began to see the shallowness of that kind of a culture that only cares about fun and only cares about doing what would attract those who don't profess the name of Christ. I came to the sad reality that those types of youth groups that only look to have fun, all they attract are people who are just interested in having fun, and they don't attract true followers of Christ. And even though true followers can be there, my experience from what I saw shows that those true followers end up starving in the midst of the fun activities. followers of Christ who are desiring to have true, good, solid teaching, and not just the milk of the word, but the true meat of the word. So when you get into that kind of a culture, though, it's very difficult to see outside of it. The youth who are involved in that type of a culture, if they haven't been exposed to good, solid teaching, they end up not thinking that there's anything outside of that, and that culture is that is Christianity, to have fun, to play games, and to have a short sermon, and then probably an altar call at the end, where you might make some emotional decision. And really the height of the emotional decisions didn't take place on a youth group, but it took place during the youth conventions that would take place. The youth conventions where you'd get 6,000 students together, there'd be even more games, even more crazy things going on. And then after all of that, there's normally be some big name band that would come in and have a concert going on, and then we'd have worship music, and then we transition into a sermon. And it's almost a culture of, we have fun, and then we get to a sermon, and then at the end of the sermon, there's an emotional decision that I have to make. And there's some emotional commitment that I have to make in order to, I guess, feel spiritual, to feel as if I'm growing. And I took part in those conventions prior to being saved. I took part after. But after I was saved, and after I'd been able to see good teaching, I really saw how dry those conventions were. That even though they were full of activity, even though they were full of noise, and even though they were full of supposed Christianity, that the true meat and the truth of the word was really absent.